For over 5 decades, the world has known Marie Osmond by her smile. It's a smile that defined an era of wholesome family entertainment, a beacon of light that shone from television screens, concert stages, and magazine covers. It feels as familiar as an old friend, radiating warmth, talent, and an unshakable girl-next-door charm. But a smile can be a mask, a smile can be a shield, and sometimes a smile can be the most heartbreaking disguise of all. For all the brightness she projected, behind that famous smile lies a lifetime of unimaginable pain that few have ever truly known. This is the story of what happens when the cameras stop rolling and the stage lights go dark. It's the heartbreaking story of a woman who has survived devastating loss, crippling depression, and the very darkest side of fame. This isn't the story of Marie Osmond, the icon. This is the story of Marie Osmond, the survivor. The story of Marie Osmond begins not with tragedy, but with a unique and demanding form of starlight. Born Olive Marie Osmond on October 13, 1959, in Ogden, Utah, she was the 8th of 9 children and the only daughter in the now legendary Osmond family, while her brothers, Alan, Wayne, Merrill, Jay, and later Donnie and Jimmy, were capturing hearts as a singing group. Marie's childhood was unfolding in the shadow of their massive fame. Her own debut was almost predestined. At just 4 years old, she made her first television appearance on The Andy Williams Show. A tiny figure on a massive stage, already being groomed for a life in the spotlight. While her brothers toured, Marie spent most of her early years at home with her mother, Olive, and her 2 oldest brothers, Verl and Tom, who were both born with profound hearing loss. It was a childhood of contrasts, a quiet, faith-filled life at home set against the whirlwind of her family's global success. She was close to her brother Donnie, but she learned early on that life in the Osmond family meant performance, discipline, and an unwavering commitment to a public image. The pressure wasn't just external. It was woven into the fabric of her identity. The Osmonds were more than a family. They were a brand. For Marie, this meant there was no room for error, no space for the normal vulnerabilities of youth. She later admitted to having an immense desire to please everyone, a trait she recognized as detrimental. "I was so desirous to please everyone," she said, "that I did nothing for myself." This people-pleasing attitude would become a recurring theme in her life, a coping mechanism that often came at a great personal cost. By the time she was a teenager, the gilded cage was fully constructed. In 1973, at just 13 years old, she was launched as a solo artist. Her cover of Paper Roses skyrocketed to #1 on the country charts, making her the youngest female artist to achieve such a feat. The success was staggering, but it came with a heavy price. She was no longer just Donnie's little sister. She was a star to be managed and marketed. The pressure intensified exponentially, robbing her of a typical adolescence and forcing her to grow up fast. The peak of this early fame was the Donnie and Marie Show, which premiered in 1976. Alongside her brother, Marie became one half of America's most beloved duo. The show was a massive success, but behind the choreographed numbers and sibling banter, a darker reality was taking shape. The demands were immense, and the scrutiny was constant. For a young girl navigating the treacherous waters of adolescence, the experience was profoundly isolating. The smile was part of the costume, but the girl wearing it was beginning to fray at the edges. On the set of the Donnie and Marie Show, Marie learned one of the cruelest lessons of fame. Your body is not your own. She was a teenager, barely 15, when a television producer took her aside and delivered a blow that would shatter her self-esteem. As she recounted years later, the words were unforgettable. "It was on that lot that I was taken out to the back by some head of the studio," she recalled. At a healthy 5'5" and about 103 pounds, the executive told her, You're an embarrassment to your family. You're fat. The cruelty didn't stop there. Another producer threatened that 250 people were going to lose their jobs because you can't keep food out of your fat face. For a girl conditioned to please everyone, this was crushing. The message was clear. Her body was a professional liability. The impact was immediate and devastating. The producer's words led her down a path of extreme dieting. She began to starve herself, surviving for days on little more than lemon water and cayenne pepper. Her weight plummeted to a skeletal 92 pounds. The girl on screen was smiling, but the person inside was wasting away, consumed by a battle she had to fight in secret. This period marked the beginning of her struggle with body dysmorphia. The turning point came one day in her dressing room. She was putting on her pantyhose when she saw what she described as an emaciated skeleton with skin on her. Her first thought was pity, thinking, "Oh my gosh, that's so sick." Then she stood up and looked in the mirror. The skeletal girl was her. It was a terrifying aha moment that revealed how distorted her self-perception had become. This experience left deep and lasting scars. She later reflected on how eating became a coping mechanism for the stresses of life, especially while being the primary provider for her family and caring for her ailing mother. The pain of this period was compounded by another, even darker, secret she was forced to carry. One that would twist her perception of trust and safety for decades. Long before the glare of studio lights, a deeper darkness had already touched Marie Osmond's life. In her 2001 memoir, Behind the Smile, she finally gave voice to the hidden pain, revealing she had been a victim of sexual abuse as a child. She handled the revelation carefully, making it clear the perpetrators were not family members or friends, but people with very temporary access to her life. The abuse happened over time and ranged from invasions of privacy to being abused sexually. Terrified for her safety, she was forced into silence, pushing the trauma down to survive. The psychological fallout was immense. The abuse fundamentally warped her understanding of trust, particularly with men. The experience was so toxic it made her physically ill. Speaking on The Talk. In 2019, she made a startling confession about how the trauma had affected her identity. "When I was 8 or 9, I actually thought I was gay," she explained. "And the reason is because I had been sexually abused to the point that they made me sick. I didn't trust them. I didn't like them." This aversion, combined with her body image issues, led to deep confusion about her own sexuality. It was the steady, loving presence of her father and brothers that eventually helped her work through these complicated feelings. Their respect showed her a different side of masculinity. "Truly, they changed my opinion on men," she said. However, healing isn't a straight line. Osmond believed the unresolved pain from the abuse was a significant factor in her later struggles with severe postpartum depression. It was a wound that never fully closed, a shadow that lingered in the background of her life, waiting for a moment of vulnerability to resurface. For a woman whose public image was built on perfection, Marie Osmond's journey through love was anything but a fairy tale. It was a path marked by idealism, painful disillusionment, and a surprising second chance at a love she thought was lost forever. Her first marriage was to Stephen Lyle Craig, a basketball player she married in 1982. They had a son, Stephen Jr., but the union was short-lived, ending in divorce in 1985. This left Marie a young single mother navigating a failed marriage in the public eye. A year later, in 1986, she married music producer Brian Blosill. This would be the longest and most complex relationship of her life. They built a large family, welcoming 2 biological children and adopting 5 more. On the surface, it looked like the idyllic family life she craved. But behind the facade, the marriage was struggling. In 2005, a fire broke out in their Utah home while Marie was away. Brian and some of their children escaped unharmed, but the house was significantly damaged. For Marie, the fire was more than a material loss. It was a destructive metaphor for her marriage. She later described it as a wake-up call that forced her to confront the truth. "I realized this home I had created was a facade to a marriage that wasn't happy," she confessed. The wake-up call was answered. In March 2007, Marie and Brian announced their divorce. For several years, she navigated life as a single mother, seemingly closing the chapter on romantic love. But her story had a surprising epilogue. In a move that stunned many, Marie remarried her first husband, Stephen Craig, in 2011. After decades apart, they found their way back to each other. She even wore the same wedding dress from their 1982 ceremony. It was a testament to enduring love and the possibility of healing. However, this newfound happiness couldn't erase the scars of the intervening years. One of the darkest periods of her life took place during her marriage to Brian Blosel, a private hell that Marie would eventually have the courage to bring into the light. In 1999, after the birth of her son Matthew, a darkness descended upon Marie that was unlike anything she'd ever experienced. She had gone through the baby blues before, but this was different. This was severe postpartum depression, PPD, a debilitating condition that remains shrouded in shame. For Marie, it was a complete unraveling. The symptoms were brutal, both mental and physical. She was gripped by a profound exhaustion, suffered from panic attacks, and had such intense neck pain that it required a hospital visit. The smiling mother the world saw on television was, in private, a woman in torment. The depression became so all-consuming that it led her to contemplate suicide. "It makes you feel like you don't even belong in your own life," she said. "You weep, you cry, you have no joy. It is the most devastating thing that I have ever been through." The breaking point came on a day when the darkness became unbearable. She walked downstairs, handed her baby to the nanny, along with some credit cards and blank checks, and said, "I can't stay here. There is something terribly wrong with me." She got in her car and just drove, sobbing hysterically for hours up the California coast before checking into a motel, completely alone. It was in that moment of isolation that she understood why a person might choose to end their life. A phone call from her mother, Olive, was her lifeline. In an extraordinary moment of empathy, her mother shared a secret she had never told. "I'm going to tell you something I've never told anyone," Olive said. "I went through exactly the same thing when I had my last child." That child was Marie's youngest brother, Jimmy. Hearing that her strong, capable mother had endured the same private hell gave Marie the hope she needed to seek help. She found a path to recovery through therapy and medical treatment that addressed hormonal imbalances. Her journey was so profound that she wrote her book, Behind the Smile: My Journey Out of Postpartum Depression, to shatter the stigma and encourage other women to seek help without shame. Her courage was a monumental step, but it couldn't prepare her for the tragedy that was yet to come. Of all the tragedies Marie Osmond has endured, none compares to the shattering loss of her son, Michael. It is the defining heartbreak of her life, a wound that will never fully heal. Michael Blosel, one of Marie's adopted children, was a bright and talented young man, but he was also deeply troubled, battling depression and addiction from a young age. Marie and her family did everything they could to help him, but his darkness was persistent. In 2010, at just 18 years old, Michael was a student in Los Angeles. In a note he left behind, he wrote about his lifelong battle with severe depression, explaining that he felt he had no friends and could never fit in. On February 26, 2010, Michael took his own life. The news was a cataclysmic blow. Marie released a statement saying, "My family and I are devastated and in deep shock by the tragic loss of our dear Michael. The pain of losing a child to suicide is an unimaginable agony. For Marie, this was amplified by circumstance. She later revealed she had missed a final phone call from Michael just before he died because she was on stage performing. The what-ifs were torturous. She had spoken to him just days before, and he had told her he felt he had no friends. I told him, I said, "Mike, I'm gonna be there Monday and it's gonna be okay," she recalled. But depression doesn't wait till Monday. Years later, on The Talk, Marie spoke for the first time about the intense bullying her son had endured. "My son who died, he was bullied," she said, her voice heavy with emotion. She revealed he was bullied very heavily, right up until his death, and that she believed this was a big component in him just feeling overwhelmed. In the aftermath, Marie faced an impossible choice: how to go on. Just 2 weeks later, she returned to the stage, explaining it was her safe place and a way to show her other children that life must continue. The grief, however, is a constant companion. "I don't think you're ever through it," she confessed nearly a decade later. "I think God gives you respites, and then all of a sudden it'll hit you like the day it did." While Marie Osmond was navigating a minefield of personal trauma, her professional life was also a source of instability and stress. After the original Donnie and Marie show ended, she found success in country music and business, but her return to television was often met with difficulty. One of her most high-profile challenges came in 2019 when she joined the panel of the daytime talk show, The Talk. She seemed like a natural fit, but her tenure lasted only 1 season. Her official statement cited a desire to spend more time with her husband and develop new projects, but reports soon surfaced suggesting a messier reality. Sources claimed there was significant friction between Marie and veteran co-hosts Sharon Osbourne and Cheryl Underwood, who allegedly gave the network an ultimatum: either Marie goes or they would. According to these sources, Marie felt she was being pushed out. Whether driven by drama or a genuine desire for a new chapter, her abrupt exit was another moment of public upheaval. Despite these challenges, Marie has consistently shown a remarkable capacity to persevere. Her run on Dancing with the Stars in 2007 showcased this resilience. During the competition, she fainted live on air after a performance. Instead of letting it derail her, she recovered with grace and humor, ultimately finishing in 3rd place. Through every canceled show and professional dispute, Marie continued to work, because performing was an intrinsic part of who she was. Today, at 65, the story of Marie Osmond is one of glittering success and devastating sorrow. The iconic smile has been tempered by tragedy, replaced by the quiet strength of a woman who has endured the unimaginable and refused to be broken. Her life is a powerful testament to perseverance. She has walked through the darkest valleys, the pressures of childhood fame, the scars of abuse, the terror of postpartum depression, and the soul-shattering loss of a child. Each trial could have been a reason to retreat, but Marie has chosen to keep fighting and sharing her story, hoping it might help someone else feel less alone. Her decision to not leave her fortune to her children is perhaps the most telling reflection of her journey. It's a choice born from a deep understanding of what truly matters. You take away the one most important gift you can give your children, and that's the ability to work, she has explained, determined to give them the one thing fame can't buy: purpose. The bubbly teen idol is now a woman of unshakable resilience. She still walks onto stages, speaks her truth, and honors the memory of those she has lost by transforming her grief into a message of hope. The tragedy of Marie Osmond is not just the suffering she has endured. It is the heartbreaking reality of what she had to overcome. But the triumph is in the woman she has become, not in spite of her pain, but because of the strength she found in surviving it. Her legacy is not just the music or the fame, it's the powerful, enduring light of a survivor. Marie Osmond's story is a powerful reminder of the hidden battles many face behind a smile. If you were moved by her journey of resilience, please consider subscribing for more stories about the human side of fame. What part of Marie's story resonated with you the most? For anyone struggling with depression, suicidal thoughts, or other mental health challenges, please know that you are not alone and help is available. You can contact the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline or other mental health resources in your area. Reaching out is a sign of strength.